I'm pretty
All
sure
right.
it's just Ion Fury, okay?
Ion.
It
I'm
it
sorry.
used to be called Ion Maiden, but they got sued by Iron Maiden because
Yeah,
Iron
I
Maiden
remember
doesn't
reading
have
that.
enough money.
Hey man, capitalism fucking sucks. Corporations going out of their way to suck money out of small game developers and the working man, you know what I mean?
I
Oh
don't know
yeah.
what Iron Maiden's been up to these days. Maybe they just need something to do.
I don't know.
Dying.
Iron Maiden would be a better. That would have been a better name. Iron Maiden.
I don't know. I mean,
All
Ion
right.
Fury is a cool name. All right, what are we doing?
All right. So we want to go
Shame
ahead
I
and get
made
started.
them,
Again, it's just a free. You guys got the floor. I don't know who wants to start, but I do know we do need to change the names because I don't think Big Puncher's name is Mel.
Yeah, no. I guess, do you want me to introduce myself and then Rags can do his thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah, let's do that.
my name is Pig Puncher. I'm a YouTuber and Twitch streamer. I've been doing it for about a little over a year now. I have like 11.4k subs, not too huge of a channel, and I do leftist political content and gaming. That's my thing. I guess you can introduce yourself now, Rags.
I am Rags. I have a YouTube channel, and I make videos about video games and social stuff. Pretty moderate kind of guy, I guess. Centery, middly sort of dude. So if you want some amazing video content, you should go to my stream and watch. Not my stream. I do stream though. I'm talking about my channel though. You can go and watch me over there at Rags RAGS. It's amazing. We'll have a gay old time.
Alrighty. Yeah, I've been watching
I'm
your
allowed to say
content. Yeah, you are. I've been watching this. I've been watching your channel since I was 16 years old. I'm 20 now. I originally started watching back when you did PC versus console videos, and that was kind of like how I was
Yeah.
introduced to you. And that was like what I preferred. But I've kind of noticed you've over the last like year or so kind of gone more away from that, and you've done more culturally political videos, more in some cases even I've noticed pretty reactionary, which is kind of what we're going to be debating on, I guess, having to do with games and politics. But I don't know. I've always preferred your more PC versus console related videos, but I'm very well aware of you.
I got bored of the PC console stuff because I eventually felt like I was just making the same video over and over, and there wasn't really enough, I guess, diversity in the videos. It was just the same thing over and over for me, and I just kind of lost passion in it, and so I started moving into stuff that I just kind of felt more interest in.
Okay. Well, I guess, do you want to state your stance on the Ion Fury situation first?
I think it's a great game. I've enjoyed it quite a bit, and I'm glad that they didn't change anything, or at least they didn't
Okay.
change the infamous soap bottle, I suppose.
Sure. Okay. So my opinion is a little bit more complicated than that. Now, my general view is that when it comes to art, and I do believe video games are art, that the makers of said art, the artists, shouldn't be censored. They shouldn't be forced not to do anything or to remove anything against their will by any overarching power like the government or any large or organization. That's what censorship is. However, a lot of the times what I'll see is consumers will be upset by something that an artist may decide to include, in the example with Iron Fury and the soap bottle. And when the company decides to change their mind, a lot of people will call it censorship when that really isn't censorship. It's just more pressure from the public.
Well, I think that when we use things like censorship and freedom of speech, freedom of expression, I think a lot of people are referring to the concept of it, not a literal legal sort of definition. Censorship comes not just from the top, from the government, but as we have seen, it's very possible, and it does happen, that you have groups, for instance, the Reset Era groups, who do have influence in the industry, who will try to push companies who are not necessarily centralized into trying to get rid of people and get them fired. And that's the kind of thing that I don't like, and that's the thing that I think that we should be avoiding immensely.
So the problem is when you say when you cite censorship when giving these examples, it comes with a very interesting connotation. So when I think censorship, and I think when most people think censorship, they may think, especially in gaming, they may think something like Germany's laws where they can't have swastikas in games because it's against their censorship laws. Like they removed them from Call of Duty, the new one, and they removed them from I think Wolfenstein as well, or even in China where
And you are against that, right?
of course, yeah. I'm always against censorship
Okay.
against artists, or just
All
censorship
right.
in general most of the time. And then, of course, with the example of like WoW and censoring bones and flesh in China. So I don't. I think it's pretty harmful if you try to compare, or at least not necessarily compare, but try to equivocate, like literally the government censoring creators and artists from being able to include things in their games, and like a games journalist outlet that says, "Hey." Look at this homophobic joke, and then people get upset about it and say, hey, that's kind of fucked up, maybe you should remove that, even if they do it in a very mean-spirited and almost harassy way. That in that case it's just kind of shitty, and it's just sort of
Now, would you say it's almost harassy, or would you say that it is harassy?
I mean, can you give me an example? I mean, there's plenty of examples where I imagine there's been death threats and stuff, and that's full-on harassment, but most cases it just seems like a lot of people. Sorry,
Calls to
what?
get people fired, for instance. So if you
Um,
had people saying this person should be fired, would that be harassment?
it depends. So if you have somebody
In
who
this
does
specific
something
instance.
of like with this, yeah, probably. Well, it depends the way they do it. So if they're constantly like sending hate mail to the company or something, then that's probably harassment, yeah. But I mean, it's not censorship. So that's like my main problem is when people misuse the term. In
All right, then
general,
then if the issue here is just the idea of whether it's called censorship or not, I understand that. I understand you don't want to conflate the two. I don't think that in circles among gamers, among people in general, people would actually say, yeah, the censorship that comes from one place is equal to the censorship that comes from like a government entity. I don't think people ever make that confusion. Maybe there's some people out there, but if you would rather use a different word, then I'm fine with that. It doesn't change the concept for me, so I'm okay with that. I don't have an issue.
I mean, you said that, but a lot of the time when I see people talking about this, and granted, this is made up from many anecdotes. I mean, I read all the review bombs that after the Ion Fury developers originally said they were going to remove the Ogay thing, and they made their apology. I read all of the review bombs. I spent the last 2 days doing it, like just scrolling down. People were review bombing it and saying the game's amazing and everything, but they turned to censorship. They bent the knee to these SJW hate mobs and they censored themselves, and even the devs themselves said they were censoring themselves. So I just think, I mean, they kind of did
But
it
does anyone
too.
think that's coming from the government? Does anyone think that's coming from the government? Because no one does.
No, but a lot lot of misusing the term, and
that's
that's
the
the
point.
problem. I mean, like,
I
I'm
don't
pretty
think that's a problem.
sure. I'm pretty sure there's people who conflate the idea that like a bunch of people or some journalist outlet or a bunch of people complaining online have the same amount of power as the government does. I mean, it just seems like it's a misuse of the word, and that's something that kind of worries me.
Do you think they
Um,
actually think that they have the same amount of power as the actual government?
no, I don't think you do. I think some people are probably dumb enough to think they have that much
I'm,
influence,
I'm
but probably not
yeah,
you.
I'm sure out there somewhere I'm sure out there somewhere there's someone who actually thinks that a a journalist site has the same amount of power as the government. Yeah, I wouldn't even talk about those people. They're probably way out there. But I don't think there's any conflation between censorship between of the government and between these game journalist sites. I mean, game journalist sites, I mean, they do have, industry-wise at least, I think it's fair to say that they have a decent amount of power, especially when it
Um,
comes to influence.
Sure, yeah, influence is one thing, but once again, censor like do you consider if somebody gets banned off of Twitter or something, do you consider that censorship?
Uh, yeah, I would.
Okay, so that's the problem. I kind of run into this issue with a lot of people. So that wouldn't really be considered censorship, that would be deplatforming. Um, so censor
It's both. If you want to call it, yeah, when I say censorship, I don't mean exclusively from the government. And if that's just a terminology issue, then fine. But we both agree. Well, we both agree it's deplatforming, right?
Deplatforming is deplatforming, yes. I mean, so If somebody
Okay,
like
that's
the
fair enough.
the example I like to give actually would be like, say you're walking down the street and you're carrying like a megaphone for some reason, and you walk past this guy who's like yelling some shit out in the street to people, and he says, "Hey, can I borrow your megaphone?" And you're like, yeah, just don't say anything fucked up with it. Like, don't yell the N word or something. You hand them the microphone, they take it, and they scream the N word, and you take it back, and they're like, "What the fuck? Why are you censoring me?" I mean, that's kind of the comparison I do between like getting banned from Twitter, for example, and
I don't think that's a very good. I don't think it's a very good comparison because on Twitter you can pretty much choose with an incredible level of control who you do and do not listen to. Whereas someone walking down the street with a megaphone, people don't have a choice in whether or not they hear that.
I mean, that's kind of irrelevant. The important part is when you sign up for Twitter or YouTube, you sign a TOS. You kind of agree to a set of rules whenever you join the platform. And if you break those rules, you do go to risk of having your platform taken away. You don't lose the ability to say anything. No one's stopping you from saying it, but you are losing your platform, the platform they gave you. So that's not really.
Do you think Twitter applies those rules evenly? Do you think they apply those rules fairly?
Yeah, probably. As a matter of fact, I would say most of the time it's actually no. I'd say larger figures usually get away with a lot more than smaller people do. I got banned for Twitter because I told a homophobe to eat shit and die. But there's like people on Twitter right now who are like literal white nationalists who spread like neo-Nazi propaganda and they aren't banned. So I mean, no, actually, they don't do it evenly. But that's pretty irrelevant.
I don't think they do either.
Point. Yeah, no, they generally don't. And as a matter of fact, they'll ban Twitter will ban you if you get mass reported. Doesn't matter what for. If enough people try to mass report you, doesn't matter if you're like the wokest SJW in the land or the craziest neo-Nazi in the world, you're going to get banned. The problem is,
Yeah, I'm
oh, sorry, what did you say?
So-
You cut out.
I'm banned off Twitter
Oh yeah, I tried to find your Twitter because I was going to follow you, but yeah.
for promoting hatred or violence against a protected / minority / whatever. Just typical Twitter. We're not going to tell you what did it, but here's some amorphous rule that is the reason why you got kicked off. So yeah, my Twitter is not around.
Did they tell you what tweet it was?
Nope.
No, they didn't.
No, it's Twitter. They'll tell you. No.
I don't know. I mean,
Now, when you get warnings, when they get warnings, they'll tell you, like, say, delete this tweet or you have to make this tweet go away because it broke our terms. But yeah, my suspension didn't come with a particular tweet, just an ambiguous reason.
Did you tweet? What do you think it was? If you could like think, what tweet do you think did it?
It's probably when I said nigger.
I'm on Twitch. Someone delete the VOD. Will I get in trouble for that? Will I get in trouble for that, chat? That might do it. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You agreed to like a set of rules, just like I agreed to a set of rules when I joined Twitch. If you break those rules, you'll get deplatformed. It's not necessarily censorship because you can, still say it, but you kind of agreed to their set of rules.
I would say that we have reached a certain point where Twitter has essentially replaced the public discourse, and there does come a point. Well, before we get too far, is it all right if we stray this far from the whole Ion Fury thing?
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's almost kind of related because it's, yeah.
All right.
What do you?
I think when it comes to, yeah.
No, go ahead. What were you saying?
Well, I was going to say that eventually I think that platforms get to such a large size that they dominate the public discourse. And when they do that, they have such immense control over the way that we think and the way that we communicate with each other as society that we should be certainly a lot more careful that the companies who make these decisions as to whether or not you're allowed to speak on these platforms should, we need to take a very close look on these things. We have to examine them very carefully. And I think that I don't think people should be banned for saying, if people want to say nasty, horrible, racist stuff, fine. I don't agree with it, but I think that they should have the freedom to do that. And even though it is it's a private platform, as you said, it has a terms of service. I don't think that any longer kind of constitutes an out or a almost like a retreat from the idea that, yeah, here's someone, especially when we know that there's plenty of people who get banned for Lord knows what, like myself. Who knows what it really was, regardless of context that anything was being said in, doesn't matter, right? I think it's very worrying. When you look at Alex Jones, whether you like him or not, I think he's a mixed bag. But when you look at a guy like Alex Jones and the fact that he can be essentially deleted from the vast majority of the internet just like that, I think that's the kind of thing that should concern us.
Alex
And as it
Jones
relates to the
literally
whole-
claimed that a shooting was a false flag, and his fans were going after the families of the people who died, like
Okay.
sending death threats and stuff like that. Listen. I'm generally not in favor of deplatforming, except for like very specific cases. But a case like with Alex Jones, where like because of what he was saying, people were going out and like going after the family of dead people who died in a shooting because they think it was a false flag because Alex Jones is spreading like crazy conspiracy theories. I think that's a case where literal people are getting hurt. I think that's a case where you can probably justify the banning of Alex Jones.
I wouldn't say so. No, I think that we need to make sure that we draw extremely big lines between well, first off, I need to see what he actually said. I need to see what he said. I'm pretty sure he went back on the whole Sandy Hook thing. But even at the time, now I will say this. If Alex Jones was specifically telling people to go out and harass person at name or whatever, that's one thing. All right, that's one thing. But if he is putting out a conspiracy theory about something and as a result his fans are doing something, that's not going to be a reason I think he should be banned.
I mean, you are in a way responsible for your audience to a degree, and if your audience is doing, I mean,
maybe.
Yeah, I mean, so as a matter of fact, I think you do a really good job. I can give you a really good example. I think you do a really good job of influencing your audience not to go after people. Do you remember the video that you did on that one kid? He was very young, and it was very clear that
yes.
yeah, you made sure to say at the beginning, do not search this kid out, do not go and harass him. You even at the beginning of your videos, you say, hey, don't go out of your way to attack these people. Inevitably, some people are going to go to their channels and say you're a fucking idiot or something, but you do a really good job of controlling your audience. But when there's somebody who has such a huge audience, who's saying such negative things about somebody, like that the people who this shooting was a false flag, and you have an audience like Alex Jones knows he has, the people in Alex Jones's audience aren't exactly the most stable people, you have a serious amount of responsibility when it comes to that. You are held accountable to some degree.
I would agree and disagree. I'd agree and disagree. So I agree that you have a responsibility to not incite people to do things. And even then, I'm kind of on the fence because ultimately an audience does decide for themselves what they do and their actions are on them. But I see what you're coming from. I would disagree in the idea that somebody should, like if Alex Jones says things and he's not telling anybody to do anything, he's not telling anybody to go somewhere, he's just saying, this is a conspiracy and the government's doing it to something alien, crystal, energy demons, whatever Alex Jones goes on to, whatever tangent. And as a result, there are people in his audience who think it's in their best interest or it's their idea to go out and do something. I don't think it's fair to necessarily punish Alex Jones for that. It would like that's the thing. When you have a situation like this, I think it's extremely contextual. And we have videos that happen all across the internet, as have been happening for years and years, where if somebody criticizes something, then that is labeled as, oh, you are inciting harassment and da. So when an issue like this, I think is really, I mean, I don't agree with the ban. I wouldn't ban him. I think the people who went out and did the harassment, they should be the ones who are, like, if you're contacting people, if you're sending credible death threats, if you are going to people's house, stuff like that, yeah, that's one thing. But I don't think Alex Jones, just by spreading a conspiracy theory that he believes is true, is a bannable offense.
I mean, if you're spreading a lie, even if he believes it's true, which when in court, his response to this, because he's been taken to court over this, his defense is always, I'm an entertainer, and so I'm just doing an act. But the people who watch him don't watch him because they think it's an act. So when he says something like, literally, this was a false flag, this is the government trying to impede on your rights, that was his point. He was trying to claim that the government was false flagging like a school shooting in order to have them take away their guns. And you know how the people who love their guns are. I own my guns. I know you own guns too because I've watched your videos.
Oh yeah.
Like when you're spreading misinformation that ends up causing harm, I don't know if you can really defend the idea of not deplatforming that individual when harm is being caused by them having that platform.
I don't think so. I think it's easy to defend because this is the responsibility of the people who actually go and commit the acts, not the person who is out there spreading their opinion on whether they think something's a conspiracy or not. If there's somebody in an audience if there's someone in an audience who goes out and do something, then they need to be the ones who are held accountable for it. If somebody does something in somebody else's name, then, that's not that person's fault.
Wait, someone
You
in
know, and I
chat.
think when it comes to the
Sorry, someone in my chat sent me a literal quote that he said, "There is danger here, people. You're being lied to by these within reach people." He like that sounds like he's heavily implying that they are, within reach. You're being lied to. There's danger here. That's like a call to action.
I don't think so. I don't think it's a call to action.
I mean, I don't know how you can say that. It sounds like I mean, if you're saying you're in danger
Was he
and people
telling
are lying
you?
to you, then I mean, he couldn't.
Was he telling
If he wanted to call people to action, he can't just say, "Hey, go kill these people" or "Go attack somebody." You have to sort of, go hint, hint, nudge, nudge. I know that's kind of like difficult to
say
pin
you have to
down,
attack?
but
Wait, did he say you have to attack them?
no, he didn't.
Okay.
I mean, it seems pretty implied, but okay. All right. So,
I
do you want?
I don't I don't get that, but I'm also not very. I didn't know we'd be talking about Alex Jones. I don't know too much about a lot of the details. Just what I'm operating on. I do stand by what I think. I just didn't know the conversation would sway this way, so I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I mean,
But even with that said,
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I mean, so my stance generally is that the only people who should be deplatformed are people who spread misinformation with the intent, or at least a somewhat discernible intent, that they intend to cause harm. So if somebody goes out and they claim things like I don't know, they like Alex Jones also did the Pizzagate thing and said the government was run by Satanists who are raping little kids. So that, I mean, there's an obvious call to action there. I mean, if you found out the government was being run by Satanists raping kids, I think you'd want to do something. But like, I don't know, someone who spreads misinformation with the intent to most likely make people rise to action and try to attack people. That's when I think someone should be deplatformed, specifically when they spread misinformation. I don't necessarily
I think it would certainly have to be a lot more specific than spreading information with an intent, because intent can sometimes, in a lot of cases, be very difficult to pin down. I'm okay with the idea that if somebody gets up and says this, they say a lie, or even if they say a truth, and then tell people to go out and specifically commit acts of violence or to commit crimes, I think that's well within. I think that's something that needs to be looked at, obviously case by case basis. But I think that the idea of misinformation and intent really kind of amorphous, and I think that can be abused immensely. But I don't necessarily disagree with the overarching idea. I just think that in a case like this, the devil's certainly in the details.
I mean, yeah, I'm pretty sure YouTube probably. I mean, it was like a big thing, like YouTube, Facebook, all these different platforms came together and were like, yeah, Alex Jones is causing like actual harm, and we're going to be held accountable for hosting him. We got to get him out of here. That's also another thing. A lot of these platforms do end up being held responsible for hosting these individuals, and so they feel they take some
I would
form of
be
the blame.
I would be more on board with the idea if I feel that the rules were applied equally. Um, let's take what's an Antifa is a good example. They go out, commit acts of violence. Should Antifa groups be banned under the same rule? Well, if we want to weigh them the same, it depends. I mean, if people were held to the same standard, if you had rules that were applied equally, then I would be somewhat more on board with the idea. But again, I think a lot of the problem is that Twitter, especially YouTube, they're very mysteriously corporate in that kind of that shadowy sort of way that Twitter and YouTube are, as we all know. So I think it's the fact that it's them doing that, and they're not open, and they don't communicate, and they don't hold people to the same standards, that is causing a lot of the immense distrust that people like me have with rules that can deplatform people.
Okay, so do you know why like these social media platforms tend to ban certain people rather than like Antifa or something like that?
Tell me.
I mean, the reason is because Antifa isn't really a group; it's more of a movement. Like there is no group Antifa. There is no leader of Antifa, and you can't become a member. Sure. The problem is you have to identify as it, and you have to find some sort of discernible connection. So, like, there's a huge difference between some account on Twitter that's like, I don't know, New England Antifa. I guess that's like, I think that's one I saw once. There's a difference between that and like a large public figure like Alex Jones, who has like a live show, and there's like undeniable connection between him and the reasons why they want to ban him. with Antifa, it's just sort
Well,
of
this
a
would apply.
movement, you know?
This would apply to an individual as well. This would apply to an individual who says, "I am Antifa, and you should do Antifa things, and go out, and you should bash this person or punch this guy, and things of that nature." If you held these two things to the same standard, then I would be far more in line with the idea.
I see people getting banned all the time for saying violence towards, like, the lefties getting banned for saying these things. They got banned for saying a homophobe should eat shit and die. They're pretty consistent with it. The way Twitter does it.
Twitter?
Yeah, I got banned from Twitter. I made a new one. Don't tell them, but I mean, they don't care that much.
I won't tell anybody.
Yeah, I only had 3K followers.
I'm kind of glad to be.
Oh yeah, Twitter's a hell site.
I'm not. Yeah, I definitely think my life got better after I got banned from Twitter as well.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's a terrible place. But like, my point here is that Twitter generally does hold they hold, I would argue, somewhat liberal views, like probably pretty left leaning. But that doesn't mean that when they,
so.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it seems like most like YouTube and whatnot do, but usually I don't see that typically affecting their decisions and they ban somebody. If you do something that breaks TOS and you get reported, you're probably either going to get your account locked and have to delete the tweet if you're lucky, those are warnings, or you're going to get full-on banned. I got full-on banned because I told someone to eat shit and die. You got banned because I guess you called someone the N-word or said the N-word.
Nope. Just said it. And I was actually... Someone said that people of a certain race aren't allowed to use a certain word. And so I was basically replying to them because I think that everyone from every race should be able to use every word and that every race should be held to the same standards. So I got banned.
But you said the N-word in your tweet?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, hey, TOS, man. So do you think that part of that has to do with the fact that corporations probably have a little bit too much power?
I would say some of them do. I would say that they can get to a point where they do. I think Twitter and Google have too much power. I think there's a certain threshold they can reach. Yeah, I'm a pretty libertarian guy, but I think there does get to a certain point when a company can get so big that we have to, start getting a little wary.
Sure. I'm generally wary of every corporation, every big company. I typically find that corporations are very flawed with how they. I'm just gonna be honest with you here. I'm a leftist. I advocate for market socialism, right. So I am very quick to criticize corporations. However, when we're living in a society that is capitalist, where corporations have their rights as well. So, for example, Twitter has their right to ban whoever they want, and it doesn't count as unconstitutional because if it doesn't, the First Amendment doesn't apply to corporations and companies or private companies. But yeah, I mean, I think that's probably a problem. But generally, I see a lot of people direct their issues with this more towards the bias of specific companies or more towards specific companies. Like if we want to bring it back to gaming. EA, for example. EA, one of the most hated, terrible fucking corporations in the gaming industry, next to, like, I don't know,
Ubisoft
I have a reputation. Yeah. And so I see, I see a lot of people who will put pressure on EA, but EA isn't the only company doing this. I mean, Blizzard does it too. Like, list every corporation in the gaming industry that does it. Yeah.
Blizzard.
I mean, they do all this horrible shit. And I'll see a lot of the times that a lot of gamers will I don't want to say complain because that sounds mean, but they'll make their voices heard about things like loot boxes and microtransactions, copy paste and
call it complaining.
Yeah, okay,
that's fine to call it complaining. I think it's reasonable.
I complain about it too, so I mean, yeah. And then I'll see a lot of them explain about or like complain about these specific things, but they never really attack the root of the problem. Every corporation in existence, their main goal is to make money. They all want to make money, and they'll do whatever they have to do in order to do so. Usually the best games ever made are all indie games. I think you'd agree with that. I mean, Minecraft, for example, wasn't made with the intent of making a lot of money. It's amazing. So I kind of get upset.
I do play a lot more AA and indie games these days, yes.
Yeah, so it just, don't you think that maybe a lot more of the blame lies on the economic system that incentivizes, like YouTube, for example, to demonetize people so that their advertisers won't pull their ads? Don't you think more of the blame lies on the economic system than the individual bias of these companies?
No, I don't think so. I think that when you have a system like now, and I didn't expect to get into a capitalism thing about corporations, but I do find it interesting. I would say that I think it's probably a better idea to formulate rules that fix issues as they arise. When it comes to EA and stuff, a lot of the people who have a problem with loot boxes, myself, you, a lot of other people were dissatisfied, not because there's an attempt at profit being made. It's how it's gone about. It's how the issue happens. And I think that is kind of the way that we're going to fix the problem. I don't think it's going to be a restructuring of an economic system. I think that the issue will be resolved through, if a problem arises, we need to come up with some idea to, or some law, some rule, some regulation. And I'm not always a fan of regulations. I'll say it, fairly libertarian guy. But I think when you have, loot boxes in games that, sell to kids and stuff like that, yeah, I do think that there's a place for rules. But I don't think that the issue is necessarily because these companies just want to make a profit. I think that all of these problems can follow that to some degree, but I think that's going too far to the root
Well, no,
and
no,
not
no.
addressing.
Every corporation, their main goal is to make money, but they provide a service of some kind in exchange for that money. And certain
Yeah.
companies, certain corporations go out of their way to go about as far as they can to squeeze out every dollar they can. With the loot boxes and copy pasted sequels and shit like that. That doesn't mean every
Okay.
corporation doesn't have that goal at heart, and they will always step on
No,
the
I'm fine with them
consumer.
having that goal at heart.
Sure, but they will
Well, I
always
don't know if they'll
step on the
always do it.
consumer. Well, they will always, if they got the opportunity to step on the consumer. We've seen it. I mean, there was a time when EA wasn't as hated as it
I'm
is
not
now.
denying they don't do it.
I mean,
But I think that it's
I'm
better to say, okay, you're doing X, so let's have a rule against X.
wait, no,
And you can't do that.
wait, Rack, you realize that like the number one goal of corporations is to make money, and at any point any chance they get, they will find a way to fuck with consumers. I mean, they've been pushing their luck for years. I mean,
Well,
loot boxes first became a thing with like I think it was like this one FIFA game on the PlayStation 2, and they've been sneaking it in over the years. They're going to continue to do this, and it's not because these individual corporations are corrupted. It's because we are in an economic system which incentivizes them to do this.
but there's no reason that just because people want to make a profit and they'll do a lot of stuff to do it, that necessarily it's predatory or bad in any way. That's why what I'm saying is if they do something that is bad, then there needs to be a rule specifically that they can't do that one thing. I don't think necessarily problem just stems from the fact that they want to make money.
It does. They're doing it to make money. So, like for example, if you look at most indie game developers, you usually see that they typically engage in more consumer-friendly practices. A lot of the time,
Sure.
they like, for example, a game that I'm following very closely right now is Dead Matter. They aren't doing any beta releases. They aren't going to do early release or anything. And every week, they are doing. They do these like dev vlogs and everything. They aren't going to do microtransactions or anything. They're making this game. It's going to be amazing. They're going to make some money, but they have the goal of making a beautiful, awesome, fun game. That's their goal. They don't have money
Okay, yeah.
at heart. And you
Sure.
usually get better content when you don't have corporations that have money being their main goal. Because then, when you do, you get fucking loot boxes and stuff. Like, I can give you tons of examples of amazing games that are made by corporations or by people who never had revenue at the center of their mind when they made them. Minecraft is a good example.
Sure, yeah. There's tons of examples of indie games that are great, of AA level games that are great, of smaller development companies who even have larger producers who will, get them the money to make the games that they want. There's tons of examples like this. But when we talk about the really, really big stuff, the EAs, the Activisions, and stuff like that, if we can identify what a problem is, that they're trying to do this thing in order to make money, then I think that the best solution is to say, all right, you can't have these rules. You have to follow these rules. There are these things that you have in the game that are either predatory or they're not legal in these countries or they're gambling or whatever the issue is. Address them and say, you are not allowed to do this. You're going to have to come up with a different way to make money that isn't, predatory. That isn't something that we've identified to be bad.
Wait, you don't
Because
think
if anything, they're certainly expensive.
you don't think that corporations do shady shit that's against the law all the time to make more money? I mean,
I think they
they'll
do, but that's just a problem.
I mean, if we put more, if we this is why I advocate for market socialism rather than like more rules and more laws and whatnot to kind of try to restrict the ways in which corporations are currently extorting the consumer now, because we can ban loot boxes, we can ban microtransactions even, but they'll find other ways. They'll figure out little getarounds. I mean, like for example, I'm pretty sure for a while it was illegal to just pay for different upgrades in games. So what they'll do is they'll add sort of an in-game cryptocurrency, and you pay real money for that, and then that's what you use. They'll find ways around it. They'll always do it. Everything from game corporations to the oil industry does things that are illegal to make more money. They'll do anything. That's why I don't advocate for more laws and more restrictions, because they'll ignore them. They have the money, they have the power to do it, they have the lawyers. But in an economic system where they can't exist because, at market socialism, the workers own the means of production. I'm sure you know all these memes, I assume.
Well, I mean, I'm not really an economic guy, actually. This conversation's not something I normally delve into, but I definitely see where you're coming from. I understand what I think you're trying to say, and I think to some degree there's certainly a place for it. I'm not going to say that the entire idea is a bad one, and I'm not going to say that everything in capitalism is a good one. I've never been like a super everything capitalism's done's good, but I tend to be more in the field of, if there's an issue in the system we have, probably better to do what we can to fix it instead of maybe swapping to something entirely different.
I don't know. I generally see
again,
reformism. So that's the problem. I don't agree with reformism. That's kind of a reformist mindset. I think that if you have a system like capitalism, which is its root, the root of the problem is it is a economic system based on profit and exploiting workers to make as much money as possible. You can't really just patch a bunch of band-aids on top of that and expect everything to be okay.
I don't think that I don't think that capitalism is just about exploiting people for profit. I'm sure it happens, but I think it's created a great deal of wealth, and people are very well off generally, and seems to be the best thing that we've tried so far. And from what I've seen, I mean, what sort of a system? I can't believe we're having economics discussions. Really isn't my forte. If we have let's take EA for instance. What would you say should be done about EA on your system? Because I'm kind of curious.
Okay, so I advocate for market socialism. I said that before. Market socialism means there would still be markets. There would still be the ability for people to come together and create products and people to buy them. There would still be businesses, but the means of production are socially owned. They are publicly owned. So it's very similar to co-ops. You've heard of co-ops, right?
I've heard of them, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like every single worker has the same amount of share in the company and everything. The people who manage everything are democratically elected. Decisions are made democratically. It's how a lot of indie game studios actually work as well, which is why another thing for them. I mean, if this structure is what we're seeing from some of the best, most respected businesses, or I guess you would places of work out
They're
there.
businesses.
Yeah, we can call them businesses.
They're businesses.
If this is the system that most of the most respected businesses out there are using, then it seems like it's probably better than the economic system that is incentivizing EA and Microsoft and Ubisoft and whatnot. I mean, so how
do you think? Well, why? Well, if you have a company who wants to do that, they have the freedom to do that if they wish. So let them do that.
To do what?
You mean become essentially a video game co-op? Yeah, if they have the ability to do that and they have the freedom to do that, then I think any company who wants to do that and set up that system should be allowed to.
So it's not so much about freedom and ability. I mean, you heard about the sad tale of Visceral Games, right? I mean, you can try to start an indie game development company, but if things start to go downhill, a bigger corporation is going to buy you out and they're going to put you underground. That's what EA did with or Activision, EA, I can't remember, did with Visceral Games.
Well, when it comes to like Visceral, I mean, ultimately they decided to be bought out, right?
Because they were going bankrupt.
If they were for sale, yeah. So they did the thing that they thought would save them. They were going bankrupt. They didn't have any money. They were going to fail anyway. It seemed.
Well, that's my point.
A shame, certainly.
Well, yeah. So that's the problem. If you have better I can't speak. It's really late at night for me. If you have better redistribution of wealth in a market socialist economy rather than a capitalist economy, it's not so much that you have these indie game developers or these indie game studios that are just kind of struggling to survive and they're trying to get air, and sometimes they go out of business and they have to let themselves be bought out by larger corporations. Instead, those larger corporations don't really exist. It's just a bunch of smaller indie game development companies.
Then they'd definitely be screwed then, because there'd be no one to get a relief of any kind to get a publisher or to get a producer that's that big or a publisher that's that big. maybe I'm not following. I don't see exactly
wouldn't
how
have
this would
well, no,
fix
you
like
wouldn't
the visceral issue.
you wouldn't have massive publishers and whatnot. You would just be producing games, and you put them up on, I don't know, like any public marketplace, Steam, for example, which would also be in a market socialist economy, more of a co-op. Like indie games do survive now. They would survive even better in a market socialist economy, and that goes for any business, especially smaller ones. This isn't just exclusive to gaming.
Do you think what would the difference between, like, obviously, as with any system, because inherently humans, are fallible things, what would the difference of corruption be between a market socialist system, especially in the gaming industry, with the one we have now? What would the differences be?
Oh, huge differences. So right now we have people who are way at the top rung of the ladder when it comes to these massive corporations. Look at the people who are running EA. These people are making like several $billion a year salaries, several $1 million a year salaries. No one's making massive like these kinds of salaries generally, or no one person, I should say, is making these kind of salaries under a market socialist economy. Rather, the share and the pay is distributed equally among the workers. So it'd be like, you have your indie game studio, or
But what
just
if the
your
workers do different jobs and they do different levels of work and
I mean,
things like that?
their work is still valuable. You take one cog out of the machine and it's going to fall apart. They still deserve to be compensated properly for their labor value.
People are obviously more important than others in it. Oh, I think we had a stream hiccup. Hello?
Oh, no, I'm still here. It roboted for a second.
All right. I was saying, obviously, when you have a development team, some people are more important than others. When you're performing pretty much any task, would
Sure.
they all be paid the same?
Yeah, no, these people would be paid more. Well, they would be elected democratically to their positions because people would decide, yeah, this person's more important, or this person is more, I should say, qualified than the rest of us, and they would probably get paid more, but not. They wouldn't be. No one's getting exploited for their labor value like they are in capitalism. I mean, most people, even people getting minimum wage, are being paid way less than their work is actually worth. But I mean, it's a complicated discussion.
So, yeah, I'm definitely not an economist, so this isn't really my forte. It definitely sounds interesting. Not on board, but it certainly sounds interesting. But I will say this: I don't believe at all for an instant, because I've seen people who are. Well, I'll say this: I think that you are certainly not. Sorry, I'm kind of searching for words. You forgive me. I thought this was on the 7th at 5 and not the 5th at 7. So I just woke up before this.
Oh no, it's all good.
But
yeah.
I enjoy talking about this kind of stuff. I think it's interesting. I think you've got nifty ideas. I still think that the best thing is to take what we have and change it, add rules, structure it this way or that. But I certainly see where you're going, and I think it's an interesting idea. And maybe, I mean, I'm not exactly, if EA falls over and dies tomorrow, I'm not going to be shedding a tear. So who knows if they're going to ever get what's coming to them? Who knows? I know that they're squeaky and they're sneaky, and they'll try to get around the rules as much as possible. Maybe that's an issue with the structure of the rules as they are. I don't know. I haven't really looked into it that deeply. Not generally something that I cover that much. I obviously am big on consumer rights and stuff like that when it comes to gaming. I'm anti loot boxes, gambling, and stuff like that, or at least when it's not properly labeled. Not necessarily against gambling, I suppose, but I think there's a lot of discussion there to be had. It's interesting to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always in favor of the consumer. That's the thing. I will always side with the consumer over any corporation, no matter what the corporation is doing. But I mean, we can, I don't know if you have to go or not, but we can bring it back around to the Ion Fury thing, because I did want to get into some of the.
Yeah, we can chat. Yeah, we can chat a little bit about it. Yeah, I can stick around for a while. Again, and I do apologize. It's a legitimate error on my part that I thought this was going to be on October the 7th at 5 p.m., not October the 5th at 7 p.m. So I am a bit unprepared, and I do apologize. I don't want to disrespect your time, but I did go through and I looked some of this. Huh?
I was saying you're good. So.
All right, I got you. I just feel I do feel a little bit embarrassed about that. I know it has happened before where I mix numbers. Perhaps I'm a little dyslexic. But when it comes to Ion Fury, I don't think that there was anything really in there that was... Well, let me ask you this. Do you think they should have changed it?
I think it kind of depends on their... Now, personally, I kind of don't... I mean, I don't like seeing, like, homophobic or just harmful shit in media. It doesn't make me feel good. But then again, I'm all in favor of the artist's freedom. but it kind of depends on it's a complicated discussion because it depends on the goals of the developers and the goals of the company, right? So the problem is, are you aware of the Discord screenshots that leaked of the devs talking about?
Yeah, I saw them. Yeah,
Yeah, so
I saw them.
so they were saying some very like mostly
I know.
transphobic shit. Wait, so
Like what?
what is your opinion on trans people? I just want to ask really quick, like
I don't. People can do what they feel is best, and I don't have a problem with trans people. I think that it can be. I think the trans issue can be overly politicized, if that makes sense. But
I mean,
man, if you feel like you're trans, then go for it. Like, I think that you need to do what's best for you. I have no problem if you're trans. Go for it if you feel that it's best. But I think that it's always good to also add that, man, word of caution, this is a big thing that you're doing, so really make sure that it's something you want to do. But man, I don't have anything really for or against trans people. They're just people like everyone else for the most part.
so I watched a few of your videos, some of your newer ones, because I've kind of slacked off on watching your videos over the last year or so. But I watched one of your newer ones today where you said that there's only two genders and the rest are glorified moods. I want to know if you like stand by that, because I want to red pill you on transgenderism if that's the case.
I suppose I would. It's a little bit of a joke. It's a little bit of a joke because I was I was reading through a list of genders and stuff like that, and I was like, oh wait, these are just moods people have. I do think that gender and sex are inextricably linked. I do think that both of the genders, while there are two, there is in a vast spectrum, but I don't really care about it all that much, honestly. If you want to be whatever, that's fine with me. If you want to be whatever gender you want, that is totally fine with me. You do your thing. You go out there and be the best, whatever you want to be. That is totally okay with me. Just don't tell me that I have to call you certain things or I have to label you as something or something like that.
So here's the problem. Like, so it may say if you want. So when you say you can do whatever you want to do, that may sound like okay, that's acceptance or whatnot. But then when you say, but you can't, don't tell me to call you what you. Well, I mean, okay, so you said
when I say go out and do whatever you want to do, I mean it's with the implication that live your life, just don't have it infringe on the things that I want to say and do. As long as it's not hurting you, then okay, it's fine.
Okay, so that's the problem because that's technically not really acceptance. It seems like it is, but it's not. So here's the problem. You said before that sex and gender are inextricably. Fuck, I can't speak today. They're linked, right? That's what you said.
I think they are.
Okay, so
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
So I've gotten a lot of arguments with people, but like currently the current like not well known, but the current academic understanding of sex and gender is a little bit more complicated than I think a lot of people understand. We sort of could like split these up in the academic community into four different categories. You have your chromosomal sex, your sexual characteristics, your gender identity, and your gender expression. Your chromosomal sex is like down into your blood, in your DNA, your chromosomes. You have XY and XX, and then you have a bunch of other ones as well that's intersex. There isn't even two chromosomal sexes, by the way, but there's like literally like I think like a few hundred.
There's the third outlier, right?
No, there's like literally hundreds.
There's the two.
No, there's
there's male, female, and
like literally hundreds of other forms of intersex. Like you can have XXY, YYXX, and then these can even manifest in physical changes. There are people out there who have like
are
a
these
dick.
Outliers to the norm, or are they?
Yeah, they're outliers to the norm. But a lot of people say they're a binary, which means there's two. But if there's outliers, that means it can't be a binary. Instead, it's a bimodal distribution, or something along those lines, or a spectrum even.
Well, I think. Well, when people say humans have 10 fingers, they're not saying you can't have 11 or 9 or something like that. I think, for me, I absolutely recognize that, intersex people exist, and there are, issues that pop up that are outside the norm that aren't, I guess, if you could say it, dare I say it, biologically intentional. But yeah, it's fine. Yeah, absolutely. There are mutations and things that happen, and not everyone turns out like the norm.
Yeah, so the important thing is just to know like it's not even a binary on the chromosomal level, and then the scientific understanding of sex characteristics is a bimodal distribution. So you have what you would consider like masculine on one end, and you have what would be considered feminine on one end. Like thick body, breasts, vagina, uterus, and whatnot on the more feminine end, and like muscles, a penis, balls, things like that on the male end, or on the like masculine end. And you have women who are more muscular and who are more on the or females, I should say, who are more masculine looking, and you have plenty of males who are more feminine looking and even have more estrogen than they do testosterone, and vice versa. So we don't even consider like sexual characteristics a binary. So I see that mistake made a lot. And then gender is pretty separate of it. So for example, you have gender identity. This is how you personally identify, and you can identify however you like, because gender is a social construct. It's constructed by society. We've had societies in the past where there's been more than two genders. And even in our society, scientific community does consider there to be more than two genders because it is socially constructed. If you are in a space that recognizes more than two, then there are more than two. It doesn't really matter, especially when it's your identity. And then you have gender expression. This refers to how you express yourself. So it doesn't really matter how you express yourself. It's however you identify. Now,
yeah, I don't have a problem with people identifying or expressing themselves as whatever.
Okay, so that's okay. So you say that, but you said before you don't want anyone pushing it on you. So I'm trying to do here is kind of
let me asterisk.
Okay.
Let me clarify just that there. I don't mind if people say that I should call them something. And generally, like, I'll call Blair White her preferred genders, Riley J. Dennis her preferred genders. That I'll go with that. That's totally fine. Absolutely, no problem at all with that. But a lot of that does come to the same level of respect that I have to everyone else. If there's someone that I hate their guts and I think they're a terrible, horrible person and they do bad things, then I'm going to be calling them nasty names in one sense. And if they say, no, you have to call me such and such, I might not respect that. But yeah, generally by default, absolutely.
So,
if somebody wants to go by something, then I'll probably call them that.
Okay, so if you find out,
if there's like a
really quick, if you find out a black person is like, I don't know, a pedophile or something really terrible, do you think that like means you can be racist to them? You can call them the N-word, you can call them a subhuman piece of shit. Do you think like being racist towards a black person because they're like a terrible person, or they've lost your respect, do you think that would be like acceptable for you?
Well, racism towards someone because they've done something, it's because they've done something, not because they're a particular race.
Well, that's the problem here, because what we're equating here is someone's gender identity. So someone's gender identity is factual. It's not so much how they identify. If they identify that way, by the definition of gender and gender identity, they are that thing. I mean, I don't know, let's take Jeffrey Epstein. He's like a fucking rapist and stuff. You don't start calling him she because, hey, he's a rapist. Why should I call him by his identity? Because it's, it doesn't make sense.
That's not something that I would do. That's kind of out there.
So let's say Blair White, it comes out that Blair White's a pedophile. Let's say that happens in a day or two. Who knows? Would you start you under your logic you would probably start calling Blair White he, because they've she's lost your respect?
No, I wouldn't. No,
that just seemed like that's where you're going with it. Like you wouldn't go out of your way to call someone what they prefer.
I think I know what you're saying. I think I articulated it poorly. If somebody wants me to take at face value that they are something that I don't perceive them to be, then we enter into the idea of respect and trust and that sort of thing. And for the vast majority of people who I believe, and I think the vast majority of people who do that absolutely mean it, and they're being totally sincere, I have no problem with that, and I'll call them whatever they want to be called. And I do it in my videos, and I'll continue to do it because I don't have an issue with it. I think that if somebody's doing it for reasons that I don't feel are genuine or in earnest, I might not. But I can't think of any of those people off the top of my head right now.
I mean, so a big example that I see a lot of people point to is Jessica Yaniv. Are you aware of her?
Oh, I am.
Okay, yeah. So the problem here is a lot of people say that Jessica Yaniv, there's a pretty decent case to make that Jessica Yaniv is pretending to be a woman in order to get to children. That's usually the case that I've seen. The problem is this doesn't really matter when you're referring to her gender, right? Like people will dead name her, which is like when you call a trans person their old name, and they'll call her he and whatnot. And even if they don't think they're being transphobic, they're not just being transphobic, they're being incorrect, because the way that the scientific community considers gender, it is your identity. So if you're calling someone, most people also, it's probably harmful because most people know of Jessica Yaniv as Jessica Yaniv, not by her dead name. So if you start saying Jason Yaniv is a pedophile, they're gonna be like, oh, okay, and then they're not.
And a dead name is what they used to go by before they changed their name.
Yeah, when a trans person, most trans people change their names. So yeah, that would be their dead name, their old name. So the problem here is someone can lose respect, or you can consider them to be trans for nefarious reasons, and then that means that they don't really they kind of lose the ability, or in your mind they kind of, you won't go calling them the gender they want to be if you consider their reasoning to be harmful. The problem is,
Potentially.
even then, it's not necessarily, you don't. So the way I see it, you don't call someone by their preferred pronouns because they want you to do it. It's the nice thing to do. You do it because it's
No,
correct.
that is why I do it.
Well, no, it's correct. Their gender identity is correct. That's how gender
No,
works.
that's why I do it. That's why I do it. It's correct or not. I'm not sure. I just I don't know. No, I don't know enough about it.
I mean,
But
what's the thing?
Respect for
well,
people.
No, it's not just respect because it's also correct. I don't call you Rags because, like, just because I respect you. I call you Rags because it's your name. If I started calling you Riggs, it wouldn't really make sense.
I understand why you might do it. Right. I understand why you might do it, but I don't know enough about the correct issue, I guess. I'll do it. This is the reason I do it. I do it because when most people say, "Oh, I'm trans," and I go by she, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, sure," and I don't even think about it. It's not even a thing that really pops into my head. I call Riley and Blair and all these people whatever they want to be called because for me, it really is just as simple as, "Oh, that's what you want to be called." Sure, fine. No skin off my back or teeth or whatever the expression is. Sure, I'll go with it. Now, because I don't know enough about the biological technicalities and the correct this and that to even really know. It's not even something I really think about all that much. It really is for me just a matter of, oh, you want to be called this? Sure.
Okay, I mean, so the problem is this is kind of what my view was before I knew a lot about how gender and sex worked. Really, I was just like, yeah, I mean, if someone wants to be called she, he, zer, zim, I mean, fuck it. As long as they're nice, I'll fucking call them whatever they want to be. I mean, mutual respect, dude. The problem is I didn't really understand a lot about how sex, gender, and transgenderism really worked back then. But as I've learned more about it, my view has changed a little bit away from that. I would probably recommend, I mean, if you want to do some research on it in a fun way, that's not like you have to go fucking read some like articles of the DMC5 or the fucking medical, it's basically the medical Bible. You can watch a channel. Have you ever heard of a channel called ContraPoints?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, I would recommend watching a few of her videos. I know if you're kind of more into right-leaning areas on YouTube, she may have a bad stigma, but like seriously, you should give her a chance.
I digest a lot of left and right stuff. I just kind of fall somewhere in the middle. Depends on the issue, but for me, even knowing a technicality, I don't know how it would change what I actually do.
I mean, it does. So the problem is how can I kind of explain this? So let's say it's not so much a matter of respect or a matter of technicality. It's more a matter of whether or not you're right or wrong, So I guess I'll use Ben Shapiro as an example. I hate him. I'm friends with Fratanga, and he said you hate him too. So I mean, like, I don't think you'll get upset if I use this as an example. But
well, I don't. It depends. He's a real mixed bag for me.
Yeah. So Ben Shapiro is pretty well known because he does not like trans people very much, and the example he'll use is like, why would I call you a woman?
Is it because he doesn't like them?
Yeah, no, like he doesn't like them. I'm pretty sure. I mean, like he may claim that's just because he thinks that they're incorrect and he has a different opinion, but it's very clear that he has some sort of emotional bias against trans people, and that motivates a lot of his decisions and a lot of his rhetoric, especially because he's literally spread misinformation on this before. Did you were you around like in these circles back when the whole Canada bill passed, where they were like, if you misgender somebody, you can get a fine? Are you aware of that?
Very lightly. I'm aware of it, but I don't know much of the details surrounding it.
Okay, so basically what happened was Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson were the number one pushers of this idea. Basically, well, it was a lie. They said that basically what happened was Canada passed a bill which added transgender people onto the protected classes list, which means you can't fire somebody for being transgender, you can't fire somebody for being black. You can't say, no, you can't live here when you're like a landlord because someone's black, and you can't do it because they're transgender. Mind you, you have to be able to, like, landlords do it all the time, I imagine, say, no, I'm not going to let black people live here, but they won't say that. You have to be able to prove it. So they just added trans people to this list. They also made it so that if you are in the workplace and you're an employer, very much like you can't go up to your employee who's a woman and, like, start, like, grinding on her and saying like fucking misogynistic shit to her, you can get sued for that. They added trans people under that same protection where your employer can't come up to you and start like harassing you based on the fact that you're trans. And a lot of right wingers on YouTube, even centrists, and especially Ben Shapiro, started spreading around the misinformation saying any random person on the street can misgender somebody and get fined, which literally just can't happen. It's just not true. It was literally fake news. It was a lie that Ben Shapiro and spread, and I have to assume either he was too stupid to know, or he had some sort of bias against trans people, and that's why he spread this lie.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well,
so yeah,
if that's the case, I don't have any issue with the idea that as long as it applies to everybody, as long as you're going to say, okay, across the board, you can't fire people because their race or their gender or anything like that. It's like,
yeah, no, it affects
seems
white
right to
people
me.
too. Like when they added gender identity, I should say, not just transgender, which means if you're like a straight white dude and somebody says I'm not going to hire you because you're a straight white dude, you can sue them. It's
all right, I'm
based
definitely
on
board with that to a degree. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt I should clarify that. Okay, so the reason why. Okay, you can go on for a second.
What's this about? Well, I was saying because this happened. What, a year and a half ago? 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think it was like 2 years ago, and recently it happened again in New York. It's been brought up a lot. Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson have spread this lie that like there's some sort of agenda to make it so that if you misgender transgender people, you can get fined or go to jail, when it's really not that. Like you have to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law that the person was like misgendering them in a way to like specifically go out of their way to harass them. Like it'd be like if someone came up to you on the street and started calling you, I don't know, like fucking, I don't know, like some offensive shit that pissed you off, and you were like, bro, leave me the fuck alone. What are you doing? And you went to court. You would have to be able to prove that they were harassing you. Except you would just be able to do it on the grounds.
What's this I hear about, like, human rights tribunals?
It's just sort of...
What's this Canadian law?
Oh, sorry, is it in chat or something?
Yeah, someone mentioned it. Someone said you're wrong about it, that there's human rights tribunal parts of it.
I mean, there's groups who come along that are like, yeah, more rights for these people, and you should, like, there are definitely people out there that want, like, mind you, none of these groups have, like, any actual power. They're just sort of, like, groups out there that are advocating for things, that say that they should make it a crime to go to, like, literally misgender trans people, but they don't really get much attention.
I assume you're against that.
Yeah, no, I don't generally think that. I think if you misgender trans people, you're wrong and you're an asshole and you're gonna lose my respect pretty quickly. But I don't know if you should go to jail for it unless you're doing it harassingly, obviously. And in a lot of cases, it can be.
I mean, if you go out of your way to like go people, I mean, well, we already have laws on harassment, so if
that's what I'm saying.
File into that, then it would just be the same. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so that's the thing. I don't
because
I look at these, mind you, these people like that I'm mentioning here are like a dime a billion. Like they are very rare, but there are, I imagine, people out there that are literally like, if you walk up to a random person on the street and you misgender them in your first interaction with them, you should be punished for it in some way. I don't agree with that. But if you know this person's told you their pronouns and you go out of your way to misgender them over and over again to like fuck with them, then you're in slippery territory. That's when you're gonna get into a harassment situation. You know what I mean?
I know what you're coming from. Yeah, I can understand what you're coming from.
Okay.
I think maybe the issue is that someone in chat actually just kind of brought up what I was going to say. I guess it's that harassment, sort of as a concept, is very ambiguous. It's kind of a gray area, and I think that's part of it that I'm sort of wary about. What people consider to be harassment, what isn't harassment, whether the definitions we come up with are really good at sort of describing the concept of what it happens. I sort of wish that it was.
I would argue.
I guess I sort of wish it was more.
No, I would argue the definition of harassment, especially in terms of law, is pretty solid in place. If you are in some way seeking to affect somebody against their will continuously, that is considered harassment. So, for example, like I'm getting, like right now, I'm literally on, like, there's a few white supremacist, like, neo-Nazi groups. I've been put on their kill list. So, like, I would consider them probably harassing me. There's, like, people who are making, like, fucking accounts on like, kiwi farms and shit trying to dox me. I would consider that harassment. That would probably be, like, one end of it, and it can also extend to, like, if you're in the workplace and some dude's coming up and, like, groping you or some shit. That's also harassment.
What? Well, yeah, I'm talking about. I know what you're saying. I think what I'm trying to say is in terms of how people like harassment, especially as a concept. What is harassment? Is it the same for everybody? In the law's definition, does it really properly constitute what we in society would consider harassment? People are different, and therefore their ability to maybe not their ability to, but their personal opinions on whether or not they've been harassed or not. Like you and I, we get death threats on the internet. We probably don't think anything about it. But
Yeah, not too much,
someone
yeah.
else, they get a death threat on the internet. Yeah, and they're like, oh, wow, this is a credible threat against my life. This is harassment. So in these two situations, it's different, but the law says this. And that's just pretty much what I'm talking about here. But yeah, obviously, when you grope people and stuff like that, yeah, obviously that's not something you should be able to do.
Really quick, I brought up the solid set in stone definition of harassment that the law goes by, at least in the U.S. A person guilty of harassment in the second degree a person is guilty of harassment in the second degree when, with intent to harass, annoy, or alarm another person, he or she strikes, shoves, kicks, or otherwise subjects such other person to physical contact or attempts to threaten to do the same. So that's in the first degree or in the second degree. So I assume in the third degree it would be a little less. It would be a little more lenient. Hold on. Harassment is a form of employment discrimination. Oh, sorry. What?
Well, even then, stuff like the intent to harass and getting into people's heads, and can we prove that they were doing this with a particular intent, or whether or not it was out of ignorance, or whether or not they didn't think what they were doing was harassment, or whether they wouldn't be bothered by it, so they didn't even think to be apathetic in a certain sense. Sorry, empathetic to a certain sense. That's the part that's the part in particular, like why I brought up the whole thing of what you and I wouldn't even bat an eye at certain things now, especially with our internet presence. But other people might get like legitimately, oh my God, this is actually something I better file.
Yeah, well, that's the thing though. Most people aren't public figures, right? I mean, most people don't generally get death threats over the internet, I feel like. And, if someone sends you a death threat over the internet, you kind of have to use your own judgment, and you can contact the police. They can do a little investigation into it. If they find that, hey, there's actual intent to not just harass, but to possibly hurt you, then yes, they're going to find that to be harassment, even a death threat. And that'll be the decision. But it's usually on a case-by-case basis. Harassment is one of those things where you kind of know it when you see it. Someone in a video game saying, like, the law will never consider... Really. Well, I mean, the law will never... You can't call the police on somebody who says, fuck you, I'd kill you in a video game, Like, you kind of have to have a reasonable case for it.
What if I feel that... Well... Finding out that reasonable case, do you think that's something that's quite so solid?
I'm not
sure.
Let me go a little bit more with this. So, in order to incriminate somebody with harassment, it's a long process. You have to go to court, you have to contact the police, it's going to cost money, so on.
Yeah,
so
I'm sure you'd have to go through the whole process.
Yeah, you have to use some form of discretion before you even start with all of this. So you have to be able to prove it beyond some reasonable doubt before you're even going to get into all that. You got to hire a lawyer and shit. So it's not so much a matter of, like, anybody can consider anything harassment. Like, it's already pretty tough to get someone incriminated for harassment in the first place. So I guess what I'm saying here is it doesn't seem like it's that huge of an issue. Like, whether or not harassment, the term or the definition of harassment is very vague or not, or too gray.
I'm not certain how big of an issue it is. It is something that sort of makes me raise my brow. Especially with, maybe it goes back to what we talked about earlier with how people use the word, and do you mean it in a more colloquial sense, or do you mean it more in a legal sense? And, what's the weight of each one, and does each person's, personal sensitivity, essentially, is that going to play a role in how it's, handled in a legal sense, and all sorts of stuff like that?
I mean, the way it would be handled in the legal sense has to do with how much of a case they have,
Yeah,
I mean, in court, you kind of have to prove it somewhat beyond a reasonable doubt, right? So it's not as simple as just, hey, I feel harassed by this person, and they have to deal with that. Like, you're not even going to bring that to court unless you think you have a good case, right?
Well, probably not.
Oh, actually, there's also
I don't like the
there's also anti-SLAPP laws that prevent people from putting forward Sorry. So basically, what they do is make it so that if you put forward some sort of case on someone harassing you, and it's proved that you did this, even with harmful intentions, or that you didn't actually have a cause to do so, you can actually be punished for wrongfully accusing someone of harassment. I forgot to bring that up too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good idea. Same thing with like false rape allegations and stuff like that. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's already exists. So yeah, if you accuse someone falsely of rape, you can face legal consequences. Sorry, I guess we should probably bring it back around to the other. What was the original? Okay, so yeah, so like I said,
Fury.
Yeah, God, we've gone well off topic.
I don't think that. Yeah, we just kind of been meandering all over the place. I kind of like it. It's nice. I don't really have discussions like this too much, so it's kind of nifty to just kind of talk with people, get their perspectives. I kind of like it.
Oh yeah.
But I will say with the Ion Fury thing, man, I don't think that "oh-gay" on a soap bottle is a hateful joke against gays.
Yeah,
I don't see the connection.
Yeah,
I don't buy it.
So under most circumstances, I would consider it to be like very harmless. It's just sort of with the context. That's when I'm like, you know, the devs in the Discord are saying some really transphobic and homophobic shit. It's like, I mean, it depends on the kind of message you want to push.
What homophobic stuff?
They were saying for starters, they were saying that transitioning is butchering your body, which it's not. Like you transition. So there is also, I forgot to bring this up as well. There exists a mental condition called gender dysphoria, which is diagnosable by medical professionals, and the cure to this infliction, I guess you could call it, is to transition physically. Like medical professionals prescribe you hormones. They will advise surgeries. Everything that has to do with transitioning when you're a transgender person, if that's what you choose to do, is done under the watchful eye and with the consent of and by medical professionals who know way better than like you or I. So I just think that whenever you see somebody saying something like, yeah, transitioning, it's butchering your body, that's pretty transphobic.
I don't know, because the only quote that I have here about that is, yes, but mutilating a perfectly healthy body while you have depression and other big mental issues won't cause suicides, I mean.
Oh, yeah, not butchering, mutilation. Yeah, so if you want to, I can argue that really quick.
I don't think that's necessarily... Well, I don't think that's necessarily an unreasonable thing for somebody to think. I don't think that's transphobic.
Well, no, so it is. It's also wrong as well. So what he's referencing here is that transgender people tend to have a really high suicide rate, and I guess he's equating transitioning, it seems like, to mutilating your body. So for starters, it's not mutilation. I mean, to word it like that is already pretty fucking scuffed to begin with. But also the idea that it's...
Do you think circumcision is mutilation?
Yeah, probably. I'm not circumcised, so I don't know. The problem is that it's done without the consent of the baby. That's why I consider it mutilation. I mean, you could consider a tattoo mutilation in that with that same logic, or a piercing.
Sure, yeah, I gotcha.
Okay, so
yeah, I gotcha. I'm just trying to understand it. Yeah.
Yeah. So not only is transitioning done with the consent of a medical professional, but obviously the consent of the person undergoing the procedure, and oftentimes it's the person who comes to the doctor, being like, I want to transition. The medical professional is like, yeah, okay. Sorry, what was I going to say? Yeah. So the idea that it's mutilation, pretty fucked up to begin with. It'd be like calling and then on top of that saying that it's not going to help when it does. So the scientific community has recognized transgender people officially since about the 50s. It's been about 60 years. And so we've experimented, the scientific community... We've experimented on the state of gender dysphoria for a long time. We've tried a lot of solutions. We've tried therapy. We've tried electroshock. We've tried essentially what they did with gay conversion therapy. We've tried everything. Mm-hmm. After 60 years of experimentation... sorry, what?
Sorry, we just got a 5-minute warning, so... We might run out of time quick. Just let me know. Give me a reminder here.
I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to go super fucking Ben Shapiro, super fast mode.
Fast.
Okay.
Go.
So the way that the scientific community has come to the conclusion that transitioning is the best way to cure gender dysphoria. And so the idea that they were writing that it's mutilating your body and it's going to make things worse is pretty fucking transphobic. It's anti-science, transphobic. That's an issue right there.
Well, hold on. I've heard that the suicide rate remains about the same even after transitioning. That's what I've heard. Is that true?
I don't believe so. What I do know is that transgender people generally have a higher suicide rate or higher rate to attempt suicide, or a higher attempted suicide rate before transitioning, but I believe it's lower attempted in general afterwards. I don't know about the overall successful suicide rate before and after. I don't think that's actually true. It seems pretty unlikely. I mean, I can bring up the stats for you if you want, but we don't have much time. you want me to
No,
do
no,
that?
it's all good. I'll look up later.
Okay.
How does this relate to homophobia?
Okay, so that is transphobic. That's the problem. When you say it would be like saying that the procedure to like chemotherapy and radiation are barbaric, and that you shouldn't, and that it's not going to help you when you have cancer. It's just wrong, scientifically incorrect, and it's transphobic because you're insisting that they're mutilating themselves. Sorry, what?
So what if? Hold up. So transphobic, I guess. Do you think that transphobia has intent implied behind it? Like even if you're not intending, it's still transphobic.
Yeah, you can be racist. You can be transphobic without really the intent. Yeah.
All right.
I don't think
asking.
they're. I don't think they were being malicious. I think they're just stupid and didn't know better.
Okay, exactly. Okay. That's good. That's just kind of what I was going for. All right.
Yeah.
I don't think they're being malicious either.
Yeah, I don't think they should be fired or anything over it. I mean, they went through like a sensitivity training, so I imagine they probably know what I've told you now. And so,
if they $1,000 to the the Trevor Foundation and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
the big reset era stuff that leaked all this stuff, they were calling for the guys to be fired, which I don't like at all. And I think what's ironic is that they were highlighting a Discord message that one of the devs says that some of these SJWs are nuts and they try to dox people and get them fired. And that was clipped by the person who then said these people should be fired. I think it's a little interesting that they did that. But talking about just the bottle itself, do you actually think that "okay" on the bottle is like a harmful homophobic joke?
well, that's the thing. It like on its own, probably not. If this whole controversy never happened and it was just there, probably wouldn't cause any harm. I wouldn't really care about it. My main issue is that when you consider the context, it kind of sends a message, especially after the controversies happen and they've decided to roll back their decision and not remove it. I was reading the newer reviews, the ones that are positive, because they stopped review bombing the game after they decided to roll back their decision. There were a lot of people saying like, haha, I'm so glad they didn't decide to remove this. And then a bunch of homophobic shit like fuck gay people and all that. And it's like, it did empower a lot of homophobes, which is something that's kind of unfortunate.
I'm sure there are some percentage of people in any group, and some of them will say hateful gay things on the internet. Yeah, sure.
Well, I mean, that's.
But I don't see.
Wait.
Did they say that? What did they? No. Yeah. What?
They said that they weren't going to bend the knee to the censorship mob and they weren't going to remove it. That was what the devs said. That was their announcement. They rolled back their decision. They were going to keep it in the game. They did remove the other thing, the thing. Yeah, and so basically, yeah, that's.
They did remove.
Yeah, they removed that because that was like you had to hack to see it, and it wasn't like a part of the game.
Well, it was the person who put it in was a non-native English speaker, and he didn't know that it had connotations in this.
I don't think I don't know if I would go with that. I mean, like that may be the case, but from what I've read, I'm pretty sure if the person knows English, then they know the connotation. So
maybe I don't know.
I mean,
All right, finish your thoughts, guys, and we'll.
Okay.
Ready to believe him that he wasn't trying to be offensive or anything.
I probably think he was. I think that's why he put it like in a place that you couldn't find it. Let's be honest here. It was definitely intentional. That's the problem. When you know the context, when you know what a lot of the mindset was of a lot of the other people on the team, and then you consider that, and then the gay thing, it seems like it's more connected.
You'd have to have the mindset of the person who put it in, why they did it, and I don't think that. I don't think it's good to just jump on it and say, yeah, I can assess his intent and judge that he was trying to do it to be harmful.
I mean, you have I
definitely wouldn't go that far.
I mean, you have like a significant amount of evidence to support the idea that maybe the person who did that was a little homophobic. I mean, you see the transphobia from some of the team. They hid
maybe they were a little homophobic. Is that enough to jump and say, yeah, they were doing it to be homophobic? Because maybe they were a little homophobic, even though I don't know the person who said it, because the dev team's obviously a lot of people on the dev team, however many people there were, is the same dev who said this, the same dev who said that other thing.
Okay, no.
Are they a hive mind?
Let me revise what I said. I'm going to say, probably beyond a reasonable doubt, I would probably say that the dev who did that was homophobic. They hid it in a place where you had to hack to see it. It's a like homophobic slur, and they apologized for it afterwards. It's pretty obvious what they did, and then they decided to keep, and then they had the gay thing into. I'm not saying they should be fired or anything. All I'm saying is it's extremely likely the person that did it was probably pretty homophobic and did it with the intent of hiding their little homophobic Easter egg in there.
How is it? But it's not hiding. It's on every shampoo bottle in the thing. It's actually kind of prominent.
I'm not talking about the gay thing. I'm talking about the fag bag thing. That was hidden. You had to hack to see it. It was hidden. Like if it wasn't a big deal, I don't know why they wouldn't have just had it like spray painted on a wall or something, like as some sort of background decoration. They hid it. Like you had to hack to see it.
What depends on It depends on what devs are doing, what part of the work. I mean, I don't know. I don't have enough information to make that judgment.
From what I read,
As for
the dev did it without anyone else's permission. They did it like hiding it. Like they attempted to hide it for a reason. Like you don't hide something like that if you don't want people to see it, or that you're not trying to be sneaky. You know what I mean? You don't hide something unless you know you're doing something wrong.
not necessarily at all.
Well,
I don't agree with that. I see where you're coming from, but I don't agree. I need more information as to who put it in, why they did, and I'm not going to jump to homophobia.
I mean, like when I say
guess
we want to.
okay, I guess we can wrap it up.
Do we want to do some closing thoughts real quick, and then we can go ahead and wrap it up. Maybe there's something we can touch on another time.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just say that it's been fun talking to you, Rags. I mean, if you want to add me on Discord, we can probably talk more later. If you want, you can join me in Fertanga's podcast. We actually have a podcast we just started, so that's up to you. And
I can hop on. Yeah.
okay, but yeah, I mean, generally, I think my main problem is like I see a lot of pretty some reactionary politics in some of your newer videos, and it seems like talking to you here. Sorry, what do you say?
Say reactionary. What do you mean?
Oh, reactionary. Here, I can give you the actual like word for definition because a lot of people use the wrong definition. Reaction.
Right,
It means to a person who's opposing political or social liberalization or progress in some form. So I see a lot of the time you'll be like anti-feminist or stuff, keep feminism out of video games and whatnot. A lot of your politics are pretty reactionary, and that's kind of, for me, that's upsetting as a leftist because I really enjoyed a lot of your earlier content, especially around the time when you did your, I think one of my favorite videos of yours was the your Witcher 3 review. But I don't know. It just seems upsetting because it just seems upsetting because some of I've seen you say things in your videos that are factually wrong in your more like political ones, or that are factually wrong. And I used to see you as somebody who was almost like always right, particularly with your
thing.
the two gender thing. Also the Disney deleting reviews, Rotten Tomatoes and Disney and YouTube deleting reviews and whatnot, and videos having to do with Brie Larson when it came to Captain Marvel. You kind of you warped that quite a bit. I don't know if that was intentional or what. But I don't know. I would like to talk with you more about this, like in a different format, maybe, if you would be down for it.
I was going by the information that I had, and I found it to be pretty accurate based on what I'd seen. But all right, yeah, sure, you bet.
Alrighty, well.
But ultimately, I guess closing thing for me, I am glad to come on. Always happy to have a chit chat. Definitely a lot of stuff to think about. Some interesting ideas thrown around. I'm not would you consider me transphobic?
I mean, so there's actually a philosophy tube video I think you should watch that would describe my opinion. I would consider you being your dad is what I would call it. It's like back in the day, like you're sitting at the dinner table with your dad and he's like, hey, I got no problem with gay people so long as they don't do it around me. It's not like expressly homophobic, but it's like not really accepting. So I don't think you're necessarily transphobic, but I don't know. Maybe you need to learn more about it. We can watch some ContraPoints videos and I think you'll be good, okay? I don't think you're malicious or anything, but maybe a little under misled or misunderstanding in some cases. We can talk more about it though.
Maybe. In any case, happy to come on. Happy to have a chat. Kind-hearted transphobe that I am.
Wait,
So
before you leave,
if you ever want to have me up?
Before you leave, can you say trans rights?
Huh?
Can you
Oh
say
no, I'm against all trans rights and all minority rights, and I hate women, and I think that we should destroy the planet. Dump sludge into the rivers. And blow up the moon.
But can you say trans rights though before you leave? Unironically, no memes. Can you say trans rights?
Trans rights. There you go. Now
I did
you
it.
Can clip it.
Yeah, people will clip that.
Now you can do it.
All right. I appreciate
Because
talking to you, Rex.
Yeah, I'm infamous for being against people having human rights.
Well, no, it's just sort of a meme. Every time I debate somebody, I ask them to say trans rights. It's just sort of like a meme in lefty communities.
Oh, I don't know about the lefty community memes.
Yeah, it's not like I'm not trying to like clip you out of context and like it's not supposed to be like a gotcha or anything. It's just sort of like my chat started spamming like smile faces whenever you said it. Like that's sort of how it works.
Yeah, I'm down with the transes having the rightses.
Hell yeah. All right, I mean, you can ask for Tanga for my Discord info if you want to talk to me again. Yeah, I mean, it's been nice talking to you, dude. I'm excited to bread pill you some more. And yeah, is there anything else you want to say before you go?
Nah. Gosh, I think we just kind of covered it. We just been meandering. I thought we were just going to talk about a video game, but man, we went all over the world.
Yeah, that's how my debates usually tend to go. Yeah, I debate people.
Huh?
We debate every topic that we kind of come across. It's like a tree. You know, you have the main topic, and then you're just gonna branch off from there.
There are certainly some things that I know more about than others. So who knows what I'll know tomorrow.
Alrighty, well, it's been nice talking to you. Is there anything else you guys want us to do before we wrap up?
Just shill your channels, and we will shill our shit, and we will end it.
Alrighty, you can do yours first, Rags.
My channel is Rags, and I say bad things, and I need to be banned.
My name is Pig Puncher, and I do leftism, and I promote trans rights and shit like that. You guys know who I am. I'm the biggest YouTuber on the platform. I'm PewDiePie. I'm coming for you. I'm coming. But yeah, that's basically it. You can follow my new Twitter because Twitter decided to ban me. So, alrighty. I guess is that
Ban
it?
Club.
Twitter ban club. Hell yeah. Is that everything?
That's pretty much it.
Alrighty. Well,
thank you guys for coming on. That was actually it veered off, but it was actually a good conversation. So
hell yeah.
It was a good chat.
I was hoping for it to get spicier, but Rags is just Rags. You're a pretty reasonable person. That's why I like your videos before, and I think you can be bread pilled. I think you'll be a leftist, and you'll be fighting against corporatism even more so by a year from now.
Oh, I'm not. I don't really see myself as a rightist, and I'm no friend of corporations anyway.
You're already halfway there, my friend.
Oh, I think the rest is a pretty big jump, but I'm down with it. I'm not a crazy person either way. I'm one of those filthy centrists that you hear so much about, shooting up schools and whatnot. That's us. That's me.
Alrighty. Well, I'm a yeet out. Okay. Have a good one, everybody.